I welcome you all to another edition of the MSA Dialogue series, and today's topic of discussion is going to be on perspective of writing in architecture. My name is Preetham, and I'm an assistant professor at the Mysore School of Architecture and a research assistant for the Archeam Center at the Liverpool School of Architecture. Today we have with us four speakers who are students at the Mysore School of Architecture. Firstly, we have Akhila Anantharaman from the fourth year. She has a passion for writing. Her hobbies include reading and character designing. She has a profound interest in studying historical settlements, culture of civilizations, and the theory of architecture. Her goal is to try and revive critical regionalism and or vernacular architecture. Combining her love for writing with architecture, she aspires to become an architectural journalist. She believes in making a difference through writing to change the world for the better. Next, we have with us Gauri Manoj from the third year. From the start, she has been inclined towards writing. Other than being a voracious reader, she loves reading, including stories, prose, and verses. To her, reading is an opportunity to explore another world filled with experiences and knowledge, and believes writing is one of the gateways to opening one's own. She finds inspiration in trying to let words convey the depth of understanding and experiences one may have. We then have with us Ritu R. Motabanur from the second year. Books have always fascinated her, how words can draw one into a new dimension, a new reality. She started with fantasy novels and acknowledged that words were powerful and felt the urge to write. This passion and determination for writing was channeled into architectural journalism. We also have with us Tanmay R. Kaushik from the first year. She has been a keen debater in her school days, had represented her school in National Science Exhibition, had been the cultural secretary in her school club activities. She loves to read. Initially, she was into reading English fiction, but moved on to reading about history and archaeology. She is interested in sharing the beauty of architecture through writing. The dialogue for today is in four parts. Part one deals with an introduction to writing in general. Part two focuses on architectural writing. Part three deals with the bias towards writers within the domain of architecture. And part four contains experiences and misconception within this domain. Any questions from the audience will be answered at the end of the session. Now I request Akhila to begin the dialogue.
So, good morning. I'm Akila, and I will be starting the discussion. So, first of all, I'm going to start with what writing is. Writing is a form of communication that allows a person to express their feelings or ideas on paper. Writing, to me, is very special because I started writing at a very young age. I started writing short stories like any other child. Uh, but down the line, I realized that writing equips me to communicate and articulate and also enhance my thinking process. It is a form of a leisure exercise to me, and I really like to write. So, in architectural writing, how I got into architectural writing was when I was in my first year. We had a design project where we had to come up with a concept, like the usual design process. One of my seniors came to our class and she was just checking out our design sheets. So that time she told me, like, oh, your concept sheet is entirely filled with words. Why don't you sketch? So that is when I realized that my entire inclination and entire thinking thought process is tied up to writing rather than other expressions, forms of expression.
Actually, I do have a similar opinion about it because I think for me, writing comes naturally, and I think writing is a response to the world around us, and our experiences help us formulate this response. And I enjoy writing from a very young age, and I enjoy writing, so I want the readers to enjoy it as well. So I usually have the sweet undertone to it, and I want them to experience writing as like reading as a good opportunity to open up to this world.
So I started reading when I was 8 years old or something. Started with Enid Blyton, went to Harry Potter and the whole series. It just keeps continuing. So after reading, I got into writing, mostly fictional writing, fantasizing and fanfics and all those things. And that way, by and by, as I came into architecture, I kind of freaked out in the beginning because everything was sketching and I didn't know how to sketch. Like I have literally virtually no sketching skills. So I literally freaked out. And after that, I was like, I realized that maybe I can bring writing into architecture. I can do some writing in architecture as well. So that is my story of coming into architecture and writing in architecture.
Mine was somehow completely different. Like it was writing for me first and then architecture. So it was like literally I didn't know about architecture before it's like first year, just before that I got into architecture. So for me, writing was like, I first was so involved in reading that I couldn't stop reading a book, and my parents had to threaten me to stop. And then that actually, they tried to convert me into, putting all of this into words and enjoying writing as much as reading. And somehow I was so passionate about it that I wanted to take up writing. But then I came to know about architecture, and I don't know, I started having writing in architecture, and here I am.
Yeah. And like sketching is, as Tanmay said, sketching is not something I would prefer. I am good at sketching and I enjoy it and it's interesting, but I wouldn't prefer it. But architecture demands it. And I can convey my thoughts better through words. And I think sketching actually, maybe sketching helps in architecture because I think sketching makes it interesting and writing makes it monotonous and unexciting to read and see. So sketching adds this break in between and it's like a quick means to convey our thoughts. But I would prefer writing.
So taking into consideration what Ritu said, I remember when I started writing, when I got into writing in architecture, I joined NASA last semester. So there we had this writing trophy, that is journalism trophy. So there the brief basically asked us to think in the perspective of a architect or an architect in making. So it asked us if we have a responsibility towards people in general, towards the society in general. And honestly, at that point, I never saw myself as an architect in making or a student of architecture, because as I said earlier, I literally freaked out. So what I did was I tried to negate it, saying that I did not feel that I had a responsibility towards society, though I am literally wrong now. And I understand that after, finishing 2 semesters now. So that is one thing. And we divided the brief. The brief was like a story for us. So, we had to break it down. It was like this adventure map, which we had to understand and stuff. So it was very interesting for me to understand that there is something in architecture where I can be good at. So, yeah.
So I have a question to ask here to all the speakers. So how do you think a person who is not skilled at writing can adapt to this process of beginning the design process through writing? How do you think something like that is possible?
Actually, there is one common method that I suggest to people who who ask me for help in writing. I would say just write whatever you think. Like all of us already have thoughts in our mind when we are trying to sketch it or when we are trying to have a design portrait. We know what we want in it. So there are words in your head. Just put it down on paper. Even if it is very disorganized or if it doesn't make sense, it's fine. Just as long as you put it down, we can sort it out later, and we are able to somehow make it into a proper organized manner. So you get a process for your designing also, and you're able to organize your thoughts properly. It would really help you.
I would suggest using bullet point method, because I usually bullet point my thoughts out and then phrase it out. Sometimes people have difficulty in finding a rhythm in writing, but bullet points is a great way. You can just convey your thoughts quickly and cleanly. And when you organize it, you get more ideas, and you can use this method.
And actually, I mean, adding on to what Ritu said, it's not really specific how you have to write. I mean, there is no, I mean, if you're taking writing as a profession, then yes, you have a lot of constrictions. But if you're writing to understand, then I do not think you need to be restricting yourself in any way. So whatever you write is good enough as long as you understand it.
Actually, I have this design process that I follow. Usually people start off with conceptual ideas or conceptual sketches, in fact, or they look at images. To me, I start with describing what I want. I have this certain idea that I want to convert into a design. I write down the thoughts. I write down the key points. Like Ritu said, I bullet point them sometimes, or sometimes I even write them as long sentences describing my design. And I think that can help any person go forward with their design, or anyone who follows a different design process like me, who wants to write first and then convert them into sketches.
Right, so that was very insightful. I think we can continue with the dialogue.
Yeah, so as Akila said about sketching and writing, when we were doing the NASA design, NASA process of architectural journalism, that was an idea that we had got. If anybody who was not interested in writing got into architectural journalism as one of their field of interest during that period, we asked them to sketch it out, and then we would try and convert it into writing. I still remember that I did not think that there are many ways of writing at that particular point. So when we had gone to Zonasa, there we had the discussion about architectural journalism. And there I realized that the judges who were sitting there told us that there are hate comments that they get in form of writing. So the writing is a positive and negative thing. So I had never thought of it that way. So yeah.
Actually, nobody is perfect right away. So, like, because I was determined and passionate about writing, I joined NASA, and because of which I was open to criticism and I wanted to develop myself. And this is some skill which you can develop. And I think maybe like if you start writing, and if you start writing, you'll finally get to a point where you can say, I'm a good writer.
Actually, the point that you made, that it is a skill that has to be developed, is very relevant, because as architects, we know that designing is a core subject, and we are trained to become better in that. But when it comes to writing, there are a lot of students who want to take up architectural journalism as a career. But I think the academic syllabus that is framed often neglects or considers writing to be a secondary option. They always put it out in the form of an elective or some subject which does not have equal credits. I was lucky enough to have studied architectural journalism as an elective in my sixth semester. It was a wonderful subject, though it was just 1 or 2 hours on alternate weeks. I learned a lot. We learned a lot about technical aspects of writing, types of writing, what kind of a writer are you. But in the end, I can summarize the entire elective and tell you that I learned 3 main things. One is to form an opinion, and the other is to investigate, to do research, and then to express or put out your thoughts in the form of writing. There were other exercises that that helped us, which was there were other exercises that helped us, which was talking about a movie or a scene in which there is a lot of architecture, trying to write architecturally about it. There were various such exercises, and it was really interesting, I think. A lot of students feel confused as to what kind of a writer or what style they should follow. My suggestion would be like any other process that you follow, you can always take examples, or you can always look up to people from the architectural journalism fraternity who have left a mark, you can always refer to their work to get an idea and to get inspired.
As Akila was saying about how it is, considering it as a professional career, um, yes, architecture journalism has been no, not well known much. So there are very few people whom we can actually ask for mentoring and all. But there are people, even among them, who actually feel that importance of writing, who feel that writing actually becomes a necessity in architecture further on. So when I was actually talking about this, when I was talking to her, I researched a little and I found this a very well-known architect, Apurva Bose-Datta, Bangalore-based. She is a very well-known architecture journalist, and she has been known to uh, how she has always expressed how difficult it was to have a passion for it, but then we don't have a method or a platform where we can express this passion for architectural journalism. And she was talking about how it is actually important because it is somehow, it's like a she expresses it like a gap, I mean bridging a gap between architects and the people, and how there are architects and designers in India whose voices have to be heard, and she is really passionate about trying to make this voice be heard by everyone, as many people as possible. So she was expressing it as a sort of a social responsibility as an architectural journalist. And further on, I thought, okay, maybe because since we are into writing and since we are more inclined towards writing, we may be thinking from only that point. So I just went and researched on some other people, some researchers and normal practicing architects. And I came across a webinar by architect Papal Suneja, architect Sangeet Sharma, and architect Rupa Rajagupta. And they were talking about how important it is to write, because it's not just us who will be referring our designs. Like whatever we have designed, there will be for further generations, there will be some part of our design or some part of our process that further on people may want to refer. So at that point, we will not be there to sit there and explain everything. So their writing becomes a very good supporting factor to solidify what you are trying to convey. So I was reading through this, and they were telling how for documentation and all, writing becomes a very important factor. Yeah.
So hypothetically speaking, how do you think documenting a project would work like without the use of sketches or drawing? How do you think the design could be conveyed in a full text report? I mean, do you think everything is, I mean, is it all vocabulary dependent or is it descriptive writing? How do you think something like this could work out?
As we were talking before, like there are different styles in writing. So I came across a few styles where they literally describe each and every motion that you go through, each and every quality of the space. It's like you're giving a visual representation through words. So the user, when the narrator, I mean the author is trying to let the user experience the space for themselves through the words. So we have those kinds of writing style where we can convey what we're trying to experience to the users also, so that they also feel, even if they are not there, they also feel the same. I think another example is when we, especially I think now, when we consider the situation that we are in now because of COVID and all, here the writing became a very important aspect, because there are designs, we can have discussions online, we can have video meetings and all these things, but when we are submitting it, we are not there to describe everything, and we want them to know that we have put a lot of thoughts into what we're designing. We have this quality of space, these intangibles that are there that we want them to know, because that much effort we have put into it. So their words become important. So we can choose this descriptive style of writing, or writing those keywords that convey those impacts. So that could be one.
Great. So I think we can continue with the dialogue.
I think we're accustomed to viewing writing as vocabulary dependent, but sometimes we need to use apt words to describe a certain thing to communicate better. But it's not purely based on a top grade glossary or something. So you can always and as Gauri said, we have to bridge the gap between architecture and people. And writing descriptive would help common people understand what we are trying to convey. And many people don't understand architecture lingo, so it's better to use common words and more descriptive, and so that they can analyze it better and they can imagine what we're talking about better. So this is what I have to add about it. And I think writing isn't necessarily a mode of expression that everybody would choose, and they think that it is strenuous. It's complicating and it's unattainable. So maybe actually I find it quite opposite. I find that it's easier for me to express my thoughts through words, and and this is what I think about it.
All right. So from my understanding, uh, grand vocabulary is probably not really necessary to convey the kind of design that has been executed or the kind of documentation that has taken place. So I think descriptive writing is quite a good way for common people to understand what exactly is happening within a certain space. So with this, we move on to the third part of the dialogue, where we're going to be addressing bias in architecture towards writers.
Yes. So I'm a first year student, as I already mentioned, and it's already established. I have had only 1 year of experience, but even in this case, I saw that when there is writing taken into consideration, people are not really interested in this. I saw. I mean, I personally have not done many designs. Like I have just been 2 semesters, so basically 2 designs till now. But I saw my seniors juries go on, and there was a lot of writing. They would ask that, why have you written so much? Is there not much for you to tell? Is this a page filler, or what? Why have you written so much? So that is something that I found very odd, and I thought it would be good to discuss upon this, because I have not much knowledge about this, but I'm sure my peers do.
Actually, Tanmay, I face a very similar situation. I'm not very good at public speaking, and I prefer to write my thoughts because I can iterate on it. Like I can perfect my words because I'm writing it down. So when I go for a jury or during a jury, the juror just asks me like, "Why don't you speak? Why don't you just say it?" But I'm better at expressing myself in the form of writing, or even when it comes to, why don't you just sketch your ideas instead of writing it down? I can't sit and read all of that. So there is you know there is this subtle pressure that is always there. You are expected to visually express yourself rather than them giving you a chance to express yourself in a comfortable or in your way, to express yourself in your way.
I have to say that is true. And also the fact that a design is like a story. So, you're kind of narrating a story in this situation. And for me, I feel that when you are narrating something, words express things more easily than sketches. So I think that it should be allowed for everybody to choose their field of communication and explanation, rather than, making us sit in a box where this is right and this is absurd.
um, Somehow the user's experience and all those things sound better. I mean, you're able to convey it through your words, and as designers, when we are trying to portray what we want the users to, what we feel the users would experience in the space, I helps us to communicate it better. So, I mean, for people who are inclined to writing, but there are I don't necessarily feel that one or the other undermines each other. It's just that somehow people who are inclined to writing would feel better while they're kind of trying to convey it to words. So as she was telling, it would be much easier to put it across through whichever medium that we feel comfortable in. because otherwise it will be like you're being forced to do something that you're not used to or you're not in your comfort zone with. So yeah.
As Gauri pointed out about users' experience, I think even as a culture, when we try to explain culture, we just show a photograph and we call it a day. But to understand a culture, I think culture means something when people share a similar experiences. So you can't just call, I think writing adds an additional effort to understand their activity and all their activities, their experiences, and there are these intangible factors also which can be properly expressed through words, as Gauri said. Like an architect must have thought a lot about all these intangible factors when designing. I think words and writing addresses this aspect of intangible factors and cultures experiences.
I'd like to add on one point, not just about the architect or his perception of concepts, but when he's trying to convey it to his client or when he's trying to make them feel the space as it is. I think words play a very important role, and this is where writing comes into play. I think we should stop disregarding writing or considering it as a secondary or allied subject or so we should start giving equal priority and importance to writing is what I feel.
Since we have come to this topic about culture, I usually, when you are reading about culture or history or archaeology or any of the fields that we've taken into consideration, content writers are the ones who write about this. Basically, content writers are people who are either blogging or writing for a website. So it is very professional. Somebody who has done journalism writes about a specific content. They research something and they write it. So I feel that we are also in a way content writers, as in, we are also researching about something. We are writing about our design. So research definitely goes into it and then we get into writing. So what are your thoughts about it? What do you think? Is it the same thing?
Definitely, what you are telling us correct. Like I feel that yes, content writers and architecture journalists are similar. Like you have content writing in architecture journalism also. We refer to facts, we portray facts, but then somehow when we try to write, I mean, when you're putting forward an architecture journalism piece, it somehow conveys that spirit of whatever we are trying to sketch through words, the spirit of the place, the quality of the space, all those will be conveyed. So sometimes I think it'll be that people who are knowledgeable about that space, like architects, they may know about it, so they'll be able to convey it to a larger extent. Whereas content writers would be basically content writing, so they'll be sticking to the facts and displaying what they understood and stating it from sources. So I feel they are similar, but yeah, there is a thin line of difference also.
So according to me, I think architecture journalists are who are specialized in writing about architecture. So they've spent 5 years or more in this field. So they have an extensive knowledge about architecture. And this architecture is very complex as it is. And there are many aspects to consider. So I think maybe content writers do research on already, I think they base it off from pre-existing sources. Like architects write about it and they research through them. So I think content writers, we need architects, like architect journalists are important because we are very specific to this field and we need specialization in this field because it's very complex.
Yeah. So according to me, my understanding is that architecture writing is also content writing, but a content writer in specific is not trained like an architectural journalist to perceive architecture in its entirety. So a person who has an experience of 5 years, like Ritu said, has knowledge about about the subject, and they're very sensitive in what they write. They're able to foresee, they're able to critique, they're able to point out the pros and cons to a design. They also have a social responsibility of trying to better life through architecture. So I think architectural journalists are more sensitive and have an attachment to what they write when you compare them to content writers.
There are a few questions in the chat box. I request the panelists to have a look at them. One of the questions or one of the statements that is made is digital storytelling through architecture seems like a good idea. A combination of visuals and writing. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
When they say a combination of visuals and writing, Leverdists, the architectural comic artist, comes to mind.
Yeah.
So there is a balance in how they try to balance out pictures and words.
And as you were telling, it's just a medium to communicate. So it's not just either writing or sketching or having just comics. You have a bit of everything in each and everything. It's like Ritu was telling, a good balance between the two would be the best option.
To an increasing streaming nowadays with Netflix and Spotify, this podcasts and docu-series and everything. It's an exciting way of reflecting and exploring, I think.
Definitely. Like now we have lots of ways to express and communicate. You have mass media, and you have networking, you have writing, you have print media. Literally, you have newsletters, newspapers. So there are a lot of options, and you see that, okay, writing is there in each and every aspect of our life that we do. So there are very good ways we can communicate and ways we can express.
Professor Ramakrishna Rao has a few thoughts to add as well.
Thank you, Preetham. Thank you, all the panelists. Really nice. I thought I'll take a few minutes to share something very important, something very critical to what you are planning. Architectural journalism internationally has 4 different platforms. The first platform is where you put your own thoughts, and these can be random thoughts. Some of you spoke about culture and heritage or whatever. If you look at some of the books written by people, it is what they have in mind. Sometimes they could be good architects, they may not be architects who have achieved fame because of their buildings, but have achieved fame because of their thoughts. So the first important platform is expressing your thoughts. The second platform is talking about your own projects. How you, and today it is vital because of this online and e-commerce and everything. How do you write about your own project? Would you like if you look at some sketches made by Corbusier or Walter Gropius or some of those so-called wonderful masters, not so-called wonderful masters, they did some sketching and somebody then picked it up and said, so it represents a crow or 2 cross lines. Now today, we have to express ourselves, and most of you are not going to work with your hand. When you become fully qualified architects, very shortly, you will work all the time on system. So you should write down, pen down how you started doing the project. This is the second platform. The third platform, which is truly architectural journalists today, is when you report about somebody else's project. So when you write, tomorrow you're a part of a journal which brings out architectural projects, and you are talking about a project done by Gauri or Akhila, how would you translate their mind into paper? Physical building, yes, you can take photographs, you can have plans, you can show circulation lines, landscape. how are you going to translate what was there in their mind when they started this project. For that, you must learn the art of asking questions, that to get the information out. Why did you take this shape? And then so on and so, and then you spin a story out of that. The fourth and very important platform is sometimes what you write provides a basis for somebody else. Let us say we have with us today's moderator, architect Preetham. Now, Preetham and architect Shreya did a lot of work on Srirangapatna and they wrote about it. Today, lots of institutions are taking that. So we have to be careful that we must write correct for the platform and correct supported by information. So these are the four platforms, and always acknowledge from your sources of information. And today you'll be amazed at the information available in India by Indian authors who have translated scripture. So by Indian authors for the ancient Indian buildings, how did they originate? You know, I read a wonderful article brought out by Sringeri Mutt, the Shankaracharya Sringeri Mutt, saying when this famous town planner called Mansara designed villages in the pre-Vedic times, he knew that diseases would happen in villages. So he placed them in such a way that the dirty water would go away and not go into the river and pollute it. That was the easiest thing, to drain it towards the river, but they would take it away. So this knowledge is now available, translated into Hindi, English, from whatever script they were. So always acknowledge your source. And if you do that, I am sure you'll absolutely enjoy the profession of architectural journalism. And for some of you, if you have not read, please read Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, in which they talk about an architect journalist, how important the architect journalist's role is. And finally, for all of you who are ready, this Architectural Design magazine is coming up with the e-version now in the next month, and they have specifically asked me to get articles from young architect journalists like you. Please forward them to MSA and we will forward them forward. And also finally, I don't need to tell you, please check your grammar. We always start with I and end up with me. So all the best. Very nice dialogues, Preetham and all, Ritu, Gauri, Tanmay, Akhila. I'm so happy. Congrats to all of you.
Thank you, sir. I think the panelists can now continue with the dialogue. There are a few more questions. We will address them towards the end of the dialogue. We have a question from Anirudh and Nandini. We will be addressing it at the end of the dialogue. So I request Ritu to continue the conversation.
Yes, so as you see, writing and is not more favorable in India, and I recently came across it because of second year writing in NASA journalism. I understood the role of architect and everything. I always thought role of architect is designing and sketching, and that's it. So when I came to second year and joined NASA, I understood that it has a lot more than just visual representation. So we've all experienced this misconception of and all these experiences where writing is seen as subsidiary, and it's not in even in a sheet we think it as a subsidiary, and we neglect it compared to sketches. And
I'd like to say something. It's not subsidiary. A lot of people have a misconception that writing is very complicated. Writing is very difficult just because somebody sketches or wishes to express themselves through sketches. Of course, everyone is entitled to do whatever they are comfortable with. But when there comes a situation where you have to write to express yourself, they find it very difficult to start.
I completely understand. Like there are experiences where people come to you and tell that, oh my God, how do you write so much? It's so completely different from what I am trying to put into words. How can you have this, the skill to put everything properly and this vocabulary? It's like, that's another thing I think. People tend to believe that, if you have a very good vocabulary, then only you can write or talk, communicate properly. So I don't know why, because usually another thing that I noticed was people telling, if you don't talk much or if you're not involved in, all other, crowd activities, etc., you are like an introvert or you don't mingle so much, you are not interested in anything. I don't know. It's just, for me personally, I enjoy being in that world of books. I enjoy reading a lot. And it's a common judgment people tend to make.
Yes, I agree with that. I've also heard of that saying that because you are writing and because you read, you're an introvert, which is not particularly necessary. There are instances where I have friends of mine who are very good writers and who are also people who party. So it's not specific that a person who writes should be an introvert and a person who sketches should be an extrovert. So there is no personalization, there is no personality based on the communication skill that you choose.
And as Tanmay was telling, they are skills. So it's not just that, writing is something greater or sketching is greater or designing is there. It's all of these, I feel, are like the three main components of architectural designing. So one just solidifies the other. It's not that you're bringing down the one because the other is more relevant. I feel all three are very important, and to have a good design where you want to convey to others. Yeah, all of these has to be in a very good balance.
I agree with that. In fact, all of these are skills, and skills can be developed. I mean, yes, some people are naturally good at something, but all of these can be developed. I myself am working on sketching better, and someone else can start trying to write better. There is no restriction that only these people can sketch, only these people can write, and writers can't sketch, and sketch artists can't write. That is not how it works.
Ultimately, I think when it comes to an academic scenario, they should allow students to express themselves in whatever medium they are comfortable with. For example, this is just an example where a thesis project in our university has to be another design project, whereas there are certain universities across the world that accommodate or they accept written thesis paper, as in a report kind of thesis paper. So I think Pritam sir would like to elaborate on his experience on this.
Yes, around the time that I got around to doing my thesis, so we were requested to have three topics, and one of the topics that I had at the time, my guide at the time told me that the entire thing is probably better off written as a book or an entire paper submission instead of having an actual built environment. So just because that was one of the outputs of the project, that topic could not be taken up. So this is quite common, I think, when it comes to research, where the study that you've been doing need not necessarily result in a built environment, but maybe a better understanding of systems of construction or something, or some other parameter that is already in existence. So yes, Akhila, I agree with you. That's a very valid point.
As a person who's comfortable sketching as well, and I think it's interesting that we get to choose what medium we want to present in, and even the challenge we put forward it was interesting because we get to choose what we wanted, and we can express our skills better in whatever medium we want. And I think it's important to allow people to choose. And I think we need to bridge the gap between visual representation and writing. And maybe sometimes it's better to convey it through both the means, but having to choose is a nice option.
I think I have a question here to ask. Do you think it's possible to conduct a jury or a design presentation purely through the use of writing? How do you think something like that could work out?
As I said, a lot of universities and colleges actually accept written thesis. So they conduct juries on these written papers, which are about architectural topics.
I would like to add, like a thesis is like our design, our ideas, what we want to convey. So maybe it is a good idea to have the means of trying to convey it also where we are comfortable with. So if you're comfortable in writing, maybe express it through writing. But if you're comfortable in sketching or having models, then better in that manner. So it's our comfort zone and how we want to express it. That is important.
Just like there are many writers, fantasy novels and everything, which they can purely explain this new reality and this new dimension through words, and they base it off later into a movie. And there are different ways you can express it. So I think this would work.
Sometimes I think, from an academic point of view, they prefer to have a built design for your thesis rather than having a written thesis, because when you're writing, a writer does not compel the user to visualize something, because when a writer says a line, a curve is also, you can interpret it in any way. So there is a free-ended interpretation that is left there. So I think that's why a lot of universities do not prefer a written thesis.
But can I ask something, like, wouldn't it be like if you have a sketch or an image, then for a person who is doing that, like interpreting it, like we told now that every single person is different. So how they understand each image or each representation would be completely up to themselves. So when we are telling that we interpret writing, each person interpret it differently, doesn't that apply to sketches and images also? When you're trying to put it into words.
I think
It's nice that while we're writing, people can add in their own emotions as well. I think it's interesting that people get to interpret it. It's interesting.
Yeah, I agree with Ritu, because every communication skill, there is this gap. In first year when we study about communication skills, that is what we are taught first, that whatever we say does not need to be interpreted by the receiver in the same way that we said. So every communication typology has the same problem. So I think we cannot do anything about that. A person will interpret it the way he wants to, the way his imagination and his mind allows him to.
Yes, I think that we've had quite an insightful discussion. Thank you for that. I think we can open the channel for any questions from the audience who have joined us today. We can start with the ones that have been posted in the chat. I'm going to read out a question by Anirudh. Sketching and writing are two different mediums of expression. Don't you think writing without sketching leaves the freedom for the reader to visualize, whereas a sketch removes that freedom, and by the end of the day, it's the choice of the consumer and their preferences? What are your thoughts on this?
As I was telling before, like he is telling how it's sketching. I mean, without writing, it leaves room for the reader to visualize. But as I was telling, when you have just as writing, I mean just writing, then we have the freedom to imagine how it is. Or if we have just sketches, we have the freedom to interpret it however it is. So if you just tell a word, I think there was one activity that was going on it was all the rage a few years back. You had this one word, it was just one simple OH, that's all. But depending on the emotion and the situation, how you use it, it tends to convey it. I mean, the experience is different. So when you're shocked, you have oh, and then you have some, okay, you are, they're telling you something sad and you're like, oh. So it's that, the grade, and it's how we interpret it. So I don't, it's up to, at the end of the day, everything is about the subjective interpretation.
Right. We have another comment by Nandini KM in the chat box. A prospective client can describe his idea through words. An architect converts the words into a tangible creation. So architects need to be good at understanding words to be able to convert it to buildings. Each one should encash on their strengths, be it in words, drawings, or sketching. So this, I think, is relevant to what was already spoken, where the medium of expression is left up to the comfort of the designer. And there's another one by Chitra Ramakrishnan. I'm reminded of the architectural universe that Bahubali managed to create. Is that also architecture? What are your thoughts on this?
I think, yeah.
Uses architecture, right? I think we all know that to create this new world and everything, we do need to base it off on a real life. So we need architecture for it, and we need to understand our history, our society, our surroundings, properly interpret it, and then make this new world out of it.
Actually, I have to agree with Ritu on this because taking any fictional world, when the writer, the author is writing it, he's taking it from one specific space. Like for example, it can be Enid Blyton, where she's written The Famous Wife. She pictures the town. It can be Malgudi days, and there R.K. Narayan pictures Mysore city. It can be Harry Potter, where the train station where J.K. Rowling is sitting is where she pictures the story starting from. So I think we need to have both. There should be an active imagination, there should be an active place happening, and that way we can relate to it. So yes, it is architecture for me.
Adding on to that, sometimes I feel that, the place or that a particular scene or something, it gives you that impact, or you are reminded, or it strikes you a lot because somehow there is a place associated, building or an architectural element associated with it. So when you talk about Bahubali and all, I think definitely we'll be suddenly reminded of that, wonderful architectural set, and you have those tall buildings and the stars. So yes, it's like, sometimes it sorts of identifies you, gives that character.
Right. We have another comment by Professor Shruti. She says, in my opinion, writing allows the reader an imagination of his or her own, which is usually limited when we give them a fully visualized space. What are your thoughts on this?
To an extent, that is actually true, I think, because somehow when we say, okay, let it be a statement of this space or this classroom reminded me of those airy space, something like that. But then suddenly we tend to imagine, okay, classroom, okay, it's a four-walled space, and you're sitting in it and you're learning. So we have this ideas of how the space is in our mind. So, and if we sketch, that kind of reinforces it. So sometimes writing gives you that freedom. That is true, actually.
It's interesting how a writer actually understands the audience that they're writing for. They empathize with them, and then they put forward something very open-ended for their own interpretation. Like ma'am said, it is true. when you sketch something out, when you read Dan Brown, he has a lot of architectural writing that he does in his stories. But I'd like to pick a particular example of The Origins, the book by Dan Brown. So there is a lot of architectural description that goes on about Sagrada Familia, but there is, if for anyone who hasn't visualized or who hasn't seen the picture, they're free to interpret it in their own way. But if this was the scenario in which he had made a comic and then there was a picture of the building, then I think, like ma'am said, it would limit their imagination.
Yes, I think that's a really interesting thing because there are other authors as well. For example, you have J.R.R. Tolkien, who is considered one of the best fantasy fiction authors of all time. He's the author of the Lord of the Rings 6-part series, and his approach to describing, the Mordor palace, or even when you talk about various, the realm of the elves, where he describes the architectural features, where all of them are there. And then you have authors like Christopher Paolini as well, from the Aragon series, the author of the Aragon series, where he's describing all these villages. So yes, of course, open-ended, leaving it open-ended is a great way to kind of stimulate the imagination of the reader. That's at least what I think. And anything else? Ritu, Tanmay, do you have anything to add on to this?
For me, what I feel is that if we are imagining something, like as you said in Aragon series or the Lord of the Rings series, if we are just reading the book and you're not visualizing it, when we are imagining something that we've already seen. We are desperately trying to relate it to something that we've already seen, not completely absurd to us. And I think this is a very humane thing to do, because we are there is this theory about aliens, and we cannot picture an alien existing outside of the earth because they don't have oxygen. We are not imagining anything that is out of our reality. So our reality is pretty fixed. So if you have to extend your imagination, you should actually be that eccentric to imagine something out of the ordinary. I don't think that is that. I think that is a very it's very big talent that only a few people have, and it's not very commonly seen.
All right. We have wishes from Ramakrishna Rao sir saying wonderful initiative, all the best. And Ranveer sir asking Gauri, when are you coming up with our first college magazine?
I'll try my best, sir, soon.
We have another comment from Professor Sapna. She says, like Tanmay mentioned, many writers have described scenarios well. Most of them were non-architects. Do you think architects will make better writers that way?
This question, actually, we had addressed it in a slightly different manner in the dialogue series. It was about content writing and content writing and architectural journalists. Yes, ma'am. I think, in my opinion, a person who knows the subject in depth will have a certain attachment and an emotional take, and there is this soul that is there and that is reflected in the writing. So I think it's very important that a person who has studied architecture writes about architectural content.
As Akhila was telling, even I feel like, when a person is in the field, or if he or she is attached to that particular aspect, we tend to have emotions attached with it. We tend to have personifications and all those interpretations that are very, how we interpret it. So it has that emotional touch. However, when we have these people who are just content writers or just stating facts, I feel that somehow it feels very raw, like how you have content and you are stating it, and we can just read it from anywhere. You're citing sources, it's gathering information and we are conveying it.
So
But most of the times, it's architects writing to architects, and we tend to have this all these words which we use, for which we are familiar with. And but for common people, it's hard. I think it would be difficult to understand what we are trying to convey. But we do have an extensive knowledge in it. Like we have studied the history, and we have studied like vernacular architectures or different aspects of it. Like, and then we have, because we have studied many aspects of it, we know what's relevant, and we know how to convey it and what to convey about it, because we are relevant in that manner.
Adding on to what Ritu said, when we first enter architecture, we are taught to imagine. So, as I said earlier, imagination leads to writing, because imagination basically leads to communication. So yes, I also think that architects would make a better writer because we are able to imagine. I'm not saying that nobody else imagines or that any other profession lacks in this field, but it's just that when I entered architecture, also I felt the same way. When I entered architecture, we were given a letter, and then we were asked to convert it into a house or a residence or a space. So that way, we are told to broaden our thinking and stop constricting ourselves in the box of what we consider to be reality.
We have another comment from Professor Sapna and Professor Shruti. If the writer is writing purely about architecture, then yes, architects might make better writers. But if it's woven into a story, it might be challenging. The architect might have to unlearn a few things and not be limited by their expertise, unfortunately. Jargons, like Professor Sapna has rightly pointed out. So what are your thoughts on this?
Maybe like because this is a different way of writing, it's a skill of like writing is a skill, so it can be developed. So we can develop another set of skills, like another way of writing, another way of approaching this writing. So we can develop skills, and I think, but architecture does add a little quirk or little help to us when we're talking about architecture, because we have had 5 years experience of it and more, and we have been into this a lot, and because I think we would have a little bit advantage because of that.
I also agree with what Shruti ma'am says, that yes, we will have to take up a new kind of skill for, to become a writer, because a writer basically is exaggerating everything. So yes, it will take a lot more than just knowing what architecture is and how to describe it to be able to write about it and tell a story.
I think, may I request Professor Shruti and Professor Sapna to give their insights? We can unmute them. May I request the moderator to please do that?
Just like to say it was quite an engaging session. Nice to see all of you all talking with so much. Yeah, some of you spoke a lot of sense. Okay. And one thing is, whatever it is, my little point is, whether it is writing or drawing or anything, don't fear from doing it. Just put that pen on paper. Most of us, the fear is there, and we don't start only. Once we make a start only, it can go forward. But maybe this is not the right audience to say this to, because like I've seen, most of the people who are participating here are the ones who put pen on paper. I guess the ones who have missed out should be listening to what I am saying. Anyways, it was nice talking to all of you. I mean, listening to all of you. And congratulations. We hope to see some more of such, dialogues and, interaction happening between our students. I'll hand it over to Shruti. Thanks, girls. Good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think Sapna ma'am has very rightly said what she did. The best way to start writing is actually start writing. So, yeah, we could be wrong. We could have mistakes, but then we have so many resources right now to sort of cross check what we're doing. We have a lot of people whom we might be friends with or in good terms with, and trust me, nobody really says no to reviewing anything that is written. At least that's what I've noticed. So yeah, start small, but I think we should just start somewhere. And these are all skills which develop over decades. If we start now at 40, probably we'll be able to write something which a lot more people would be willing to read. So yeah, and when it comes to architecture, I think even in my journalism class and probably my history class or wherever, I keep reiterating that somehow writing doesn't get the sort of importance that it should, because people feel, oh chalo, we don't really need to know, or our people who write well may not do well as architects. So whatever these misconceptions are, I think there are many ways to express yourself. I don't think there is a single person who would disagree that writing is one of the most powerful ones. One of the most powerful ways to express yourself. So architecture being something which is very visual, architecture being something which is very expressive, I don't see why writing should be used as an effective medium to express architecture. As in, yeah, I mean, I think that's all I have to say. It was great seeing all of you. It's nice to see that MSA has a community of people who believe in writing skills. And let us hope you guys are able to do something which all of us can be proud of. I guess. Yeah. Well done. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
There's one last comment by Nandini KM. The writers basically tell stories. Architecture is a part of the story. This is something that, yes, we have spoken about. Do you have any more thoughts you want to add on to this?
I just had a personal thought on it. Like it's very silly, probably. I don't know. I was thinking it's like what we are learning in architecture or what we try to do in our design. All those are like alphabet series. We have words, we have rules, and we have all these compositions and prepositions and all these factors which make up our writing. And that's what our architecture designs are. And these people, the masters, the legends in architecture, they tend to portray, like it's up to us how we interpret it. Whether it be a story, whether it be a poem or a prose, it's up to us how we interpret it. And the legends and masters have interpreted it very beautifully. Maybe we can say it's like a beautiful poem or a beautiful story. So everything depends on our subjective interpretation. So yes, it's a story. Yes, ma'am.
So the comment that was recently posted is a lot of these legends in architecture write very well too. Yes, I think all of us can unanimously agree on that. Korea's essays, Doshi's book, and many more. Yes. Professor Ranbir has commented ghostwriters. Professor Ranbir has written a comment saying, I have written for an architect, written for architects. So would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, I was just saying that quite a few architects who are very big names don't know how to write. That is my personal experience. And yes, we have written articles for big architects. And in any field, ghostwriting is very common. All politicians, ghostwriters, they all have people writing essays for them, speeches for them. There's nothing wrong in that. It's a profession by itself. That's all I want to talk about ghostwriters. You guys can become good ghostwriters.
So Professor Shruti has commented, but they speak very well too, sir, so maybe not.
Some people speak well and some people do not speak well.
Public speaking can differ. Like even though you're good at public speaking, and you cannot be a good writer. it's
You
not.
might need a ghostwriter to write your public speaking script. Or it could be the other way around. You could be a very good ghostwriter who is bad at public speaking.
Oh yes, definitely. See, that way every political speaker should be an excellent writer. I primarily feel that it's all a question of communication. Whether you do it by writing, whether you do it by speaking, whether you do it by sketching or acting, it's all how you communicate, how you pass on your message. That has been the thing for centuries. How do you pass on information? So it could be a combination of all of them, which would the best way to express yourself.
Yes, sir. I think one thing that what we have done, even considering from prehistoric times when when the first set of human beings decided to chronicle their history through the use of hieroglyphics and symbolism of nature, I think what they were trying to do is they were trying to freeze a moment in time on a particular in a particular frame, in a particular place. So I think writing is a great way for us to understand our own history, our evolution, different cultural evolutionary aspects to it. The same goes with art as well. And
Actually, so I would like to just add on to it. Like, I came across a prose where they actually told this thing. Like, since a beginning, we have always landmarked by having structures or elements and all. But over time, these tend to fade away. But however, when we have it written down or when we have it penned down, and there are many ways, as you said, we had hieroglyphics, and then later on we had a writing on slabs and stone, and so they tend to how do you say, make a mark on history when all these build structures fade away. So their communication does become a very
So words, we don't notice this, but in a lot of our cultures, words have been subtly induced. Our cultures, many of our cultures cannot exist without words.
Words are like the first thing that comes. Like, I read this thing about why in every culture, in every language, mom or mama and everything is like same word. So it's like because a baby when it's born and first word is usually mama. So a mother is called mama or mom. So it's very interesting to see how words develop throughout all the cultures and in all the languages.
What do you think? Isn't it unfair that English is it's always the language of communication, and don't know English very well are left behind? What do you feel about it?
language. I feel is just like another medium to put our ideas across. And then English just became one of the languages that united everyone globally. That everyone could learn to convey their thoughts, so that because because of the region or because of our nation, we tend to have different slangs, or we tend to have different languages. So there had to be one language that kind of unified it together, where people could put their thoughts across to others people also. So yeah.
Actually, I have to add on to what Gauri said. If there was no colonialism, then I do not think English would have, ever come to India. But if that did not happen also, I think there would have been a medium of communication. I think we would have eventually, come to some sort of a truce and, put a
Sign language.
yeah. So it's not exactly necessary, but honestly speaking, even if we do speak English, even if we do write in English, even if the communication most of the time is in English, our thought is always in our local language. Our thought is always my thought is always in Kannada. And from Kannada, it converts to English and then becomes into English writing or speaking or whatever it is. So
that is very evident.
Actually,
Also. There are some people,
like Sir mentioned, a lot of us, yeah, a lot of our friends, for example, they feel very left out because they're not very well versed in English. They're much better in their native language like Kannada or Malayalam or Tamil. They write better in that, but they somehow have this assumption that just because I can't speak English or write English that well, I'm not good at writing. That is something that I've seen a lot with my own batchmates.
I was just going to add on to what Tanmay was telling. We were talking about language now. So thinking, as she said, we tend to think in our local language. That is completely true. So I think many of the times when people write in English, that's where the mistake, we see that mistakes happening. Like whatever we are thinking, we just directly put it into words in English. So it sorts of goes out of track. It gets shuffled up, or we'll have to sit and sort the grammar again and again. So,
what's wrong in translation?
Nothing.
There are some literal translations. There are some literal translations that are made, sir. In English, the grammar makes it sound very.
Oh, that way. Okay.
Yeah.
And in translations, there are some things like their slang, which gets because they'll have this slang in their own language, which gets misinterpreted in other languages.
I remember once the final years, there was a Viva, and the external reviewer mentioned one thing, that you guys, all your students, your English is so poor, you should all go for English tuition. And I feel so bad hearing that, that every time I have a class now, I generally try to teach as much as I can, correct English mistakes and all that, so that these kind of comments don't come from, people. It's all a question of communication. And yes, the problem is the language.
Sir, I think it is not the problem of the language, it is also how we are upholding this language. Because English is a very, very widespread language, we are putting it in the, queenly status, which I do not think should be done. We have our own local language, which also need to be equally acknowledged and equally put into the, put it the same place where any other language is put into. Like English is always said to be the queen's language. It is said to be language of the wealthy, and it is not really so. Our local languages are also equally important and should be given equal status.
Moderators, are we deviating from the subject, from written to language, or is it okay?
I think it's on point. It's
on point?
Relevant here, because
no,
this
so
is also a relevant part of
okay.
writing.
No, I mean, this problem of not being able to communicate, what do you feel?
One common fear I think everyone has is the fear of being, wrong. When we try to tell, we fear that we'll make mistakes while we are trying to talk about it. But I feel it's with the mistakes that we learn, because when we do these mistakes only, people will tend to correct us, and okay, then we know there is something wrong with what we said, and then we correct ourselves.
Yes,
I think we should normalize unlearning, learning, doing mistakes. We should normalize it, because I think by communicating, we can evolve better. We can understand others' thoughts better, because when you're drawn in your own thoughts, I don't think you're understanding this world and understanding the complexity of this world. Only by communicating with others, unlearning, learning, and developing, I think we should normalize this unlearning part of it. Many of the times we'll be wrong about certain things. And we need to unlearn, correct ourselves, and become better. I think as a society, we can grow by doing this.
I have to agree with what Ritu says, because it is considered wrong if you are wrong. And I think that is not right. If you are wrong, there is a chance for you to be right. So, it may be one step down, but if you don't take that step down, you will not go 2 steps further. So if even from a very young age, like if we are in second standard and we are, learning tables, and you say 2 square 2 is 4 or something, and 2 square 2 is 8, then, we get a beating on the hand, or the teacher, says this is wrong. I don't think that is the way of approach that we should take when we are teaching children that wrong is right. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes.
So how do we get over this fear of being wrong?
By being wrong.
I think from a young age, we
How do you
thought that-
convince students? How do you convince your classmates? How do you convince the whole class?
So
One thing I would say is the fear of being judged. A lot of students have a lot of thoughts in their head that they want to convey, but they have a fear. Make a lot of mistakes. Like, it doesn't matter who judges you. Make a lot of mistakes. Get used to making mistakes, because only then you will overcome this fear of being wrong or being judged.
I think it's very nice that a person would develop and understand different perspectives and different cultures and be respectful of it. I think it's important to be open to criticism. We need to be open to it, and we need to be thankful to people who actually criticize you so that you can be better.
And I think the best way for our lecturers to tell us that it's okay to be wrong is by telling what mistakes you have already made, so that we can understand that they also made this mistake. So it's okay for us to learn from that.
So this was very insightful. I think we can conclude the session since no other questions are coming.
Hello, sir. Vidya Sagar here.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, I would like to, I would like to add on a point about visual representation and writing going hand in hand. I have to point out that it has already happened in various methods, but that visual representation, no matter what status it holds, writing has always found its way into it. And one of the major ways is in the comics. Like, as you can see, like if there is an action sequence going on, there are always words that represent the action. Like if there's a explosion going on, there's a boom, which helps us understand more. So yeah, there is a way visual representation and writing can come together.
A very interesting point. What do the panelists think about this?
But it limits your
We were actually discussing this yesterday.
Interpretation. It says kapav, and you're like, yeah, I understand this, and you don't interpret it more, and
yeah, but the thing is, they're both represented in a way that we understand. Like they both are playing hand in hand with one another. That is what matters at the end, right? Yeah. Like
I think Akila actually mentioned that how visual representation can come into it's into this writing and everything about with comics and even this documentary everything. So yeah, visual representation is also another, like we always find a way to make our lives better and entertain us.
Vidya Sagar, I'd like to agree to you on this, but I have a slightly different opinion, because I have seen a lot of novels where there are certain parts that are very difficult to visualize, even though the writer has tried their best to convey it in such a way. So they add this, let's say, a small snippet of the image or what they're trying to talk about. You can see this in a lot of novels by Enid Blyton, by Agatha Christie. I think a lot of them have adapted using visual to a very minimum extent in their writing works, because certain parts do get very difficult to understand just through words.
That's true. I think even with Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, there are slight visual cues every couple of pages. So I think maybe that could have, that's probably the precursor to comic books anyway. If you look at the evolution of...
That kind of directs, that kind of directs you, but doesn't necessarily stop you from imagining more. It doesn't put a kind of strain on your imagination, I feel. They're just directing the flow of your imagination when you add very minimum pictures and add a lot of writing.
Yeah. So I think with this we can conclude the session. I thank you all for your participation on this platform and for sharing your perspectives on this subject. This is quite an insightful session, and dialogue was very, very, very helpful in understanding how writing plays a role in architectural expression. I thank all the panelists for having the time to be a part of this. And I thank all the people who have been a part of the entire dialogue as well. I hope you have a great day ahead, and thank you for your time.